The crystal hummed beneath Lyra Winter's fingertips, its azure surface pulsing with an inner light that seemed to whisper secrets of ages past. The young apprentice mage stood in the dimly lit study of the crystal tower, her breath creating small clouds in the cool air as she focused on the delicate task before her. Again, Magistrate Thuron's stern voice cut through the silence. The aged mage loomed over her workspace, his silver-streaked beard and traditional purple robes lending him an air of authority that made Lyra's hands tremble slightly. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The time crystal, no larger than a robin's egg, responded to her touch, its glow intensifying. This was her seventh attempt today to properly attune to its frequency, and failure meant another evening of cleaning the tower's countless artifacts. Remember, Thuron continued, packing behind her, time crystals are not mere tools. They are fragments of reality itself, torn from the fabric of existence. Treat them with the respect they deserve. Lyra nodded, closing her eyes. She could feel the crystal's energy flowing through her, different from any other magical artifact she'd handled during her 3 years as an apprentice. Where fire gems burned hot and wind stones whispered with ethereal voices, time crystals resonated with something deeper, a steady pulse that matched the beating of her own heart. The crystal's glow suddenly intensified, filling the room with brilliant blue light. Lyra's eyes snapped open as she felt the familiar tingle of magic coursing through her veins. But this time, something was different. The energy didn't just flow through her, it synchronized with her very being. Thuron stepped forward, his eyes widening. "Impossible," he muttered, watching as the crystal's light formed intricate patterns in the air around Lyra's hands. Time seemed to slow around her. Dust motes hung suspended in the air, caught in the crystal's ethereal glow. Lyra could feel every second as a tangible thing, like droplets of water she could reach out and touch. "How are you doing this?" Thuron demanded, his composure cracking. No apprentice has ever achieved this level of resonance on their first day of crystal training. Lyra couldn't answer. The sensation was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying in equal measure. Through the crystal, she could sense the flow of time itself, countless possibilities branching out like rivers from a single moment. The crystal's light suddenly pulsed, and time snapped back to its normal flow. Lyra gasped, stumbling backward as the connection broke. Thuron caught her arm, steadying her, but his grip was tight, too tight. "Remarkable," he said, but his tone held something besides praise. Was it fear, suspicion? "You have a natural affinity for the crystals, one I haven't seen in many years." Lyra straightened, trying to catch her breath. Is that good?" Thuron released her arm, his expression unreadable. "That remains to be seen. Natural talent can be as much a curse as a blessing, especially when it comes to temporal magic." He turned away, his robes sweeping across the stone floor. "Clean up here, we're done for today." "But Magistrate," Lyra protested, "I finally made a connection, shouldn't we continue while?" "Enough," Thuron's voice echoed off the tower walls. "You will do as instructed. Tomorrow we will discuss the proper protocols for handling time crystals. Clearly I have been remiss in your preparation." He strode from the room, leaving Lyra alone with the softly glowing crystal. She stared at it, still feeling echoes of that incredible connection. Why had Thuron reacted so strongly? She'd seen him praise other apprentices for far less significant achievements. As she began cleaning the workspace, carefully storing the crystal in its lead-lined box, Lyra noticed something odd. On Thuron's desk, partially hidden beneath a stack of papers, was an ancient text she'd never seen before. Its spine bore symbols that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them. Glancing at the door, Lyra moved closer. The book's cover was made of some strange, iridescent material that reminded her of the time crystal's glow. She reached out to touch it. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Lyra spun around to find a young man standing in the doorway. Jasper Reed, another of Thuron's apprentices, leaned against the frame with his usual casual grace. His dark hair fell across one eye, and his apprentice robes were characteristically disheveled. "Jasper, I was just snooping through the magistrate's private collection," he grinned. "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me, but seriously, that book, bad idea. Last apprentice who touched it spent a week speaking backwards." Lyra stepped away from the desk, her cheeks burning. "I heard about your crystal attunement test yesterday. How did it go?" Jasper's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, you know, the usual, lots of sitting around, staring at a pretty rock, accomplishing absolutely nothing." He studied her face. "But I heard you had better luck. Word travels fast in the tower." I'm not sure luck is the right word, Lyra said, absently rubbing her arm where Thuron had gripped it. The magistrate seemed troubled by what happened. Jasper moved into the room, lowering his voice. Listen, Lyra, there's something you should know about time crystals. They're not just tools for measuring and manipulating temporal energy. They're a bell tolled somewhere in the tower, its deep resonance making the windows vibrate. Jasper cursed under his breath. Evening meditation, he said. We'll talk later, just be careful, all right, and whatever you do, don't practice with the crystals alone. He hurried from the room, leaving Lyra with more questions than answers. She looked back at the strange book on Thuron's desk, then at the lead box containing the time crystal. Something wasn't right here. The way Thuron had reacted, Jasper's warning, the mysterious book, it all pointed to something bigger than simple apprentice training. As Lyra made her way to the meditation chamber, she made a decision. She would find out what Thuron was hiding, what made these crystals so special, and why her connection to them had caused such alarm. But first, she needed to understand her own abilities better. Tonight, after everyone else had retired, she would return to the study. Despite Jasper's warning, she knew she had to try connecting with the crystal again. The secrets it held, the possibilities it showed her, they were too important to ignore. What Lyra didn't know, as she hurried down the tower's winding stairs, was that her decision would set in motion events that would change not just her life, but the very fabric of reality itself. Raven Blackwood melted into the shadows of the crystal tower's uppermost spire, her dark cloak rippling like liquid night. 3 weeks of careful observation had led to this moment. The guards below maintained their usual patrol pattern, oblivious to her presence among the gargoyles and crystalline spires. Another quiet night, one guard muttered to his companion, their boots clicking against the polished stone. Raven allowed herself a small smile. Quiet was exactly what she needed. Her fingers brushed against the enchanted lockpicks hidden in her sleeved tools that had helped her breach some of the most secure vaults in the Empire. But tonight's target was different. Tonight, she hunted something far more valuable than mere gold or jewels. Time crystals, the mysterious artifacts that had the Imperial Guard in such an uproar lately. A flash of movement caught her eye. Below, in one of the tower's many study rooms, a light flickered. Raven frowned. According to her intelligence, all apprentices should be in their quarters at this hour. She adjusted her position, peering through the frost-covered window. Inside, a young woman with auburn hair stood over a workbench, her hands hovering above a softly glowing crystal. Raven recognized her from her surveillance, Lyra Winters, Magistrate Thuron's newest prodigy. Interesting, Raven whispered to herself. What are you up to, little apprentice? Before she could investigate further, heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor below. Raven pressed herself flat against the wall as Captain Nova Sterling of the Imperial Guard strode past, her silver armor gleaming in the moonlight. Double the patrols, Nova commanded to her subordinates. Magistrate Thuron reports unusual energy fluctuations. No one enters or leaves without my direct approval. Raven's pulse quickened. Additional security would complicate things, but the captain's words confirmed her suspicions. Something was happening with the time crystals, something big enough to worry the tower's leadership. Inside the study room, Lyra remained focused on her work, unaware of the various eyes watching her movements. The crystal before her pulsed with increasing intensity, its light casting strange shadows on the walls. Nova paused, her attention drawn to the illuminated window. What in the Emperor's name? She turned sharply to her guards. Check that room, now. Raven watched as the situation unfolded below. The guards rushed toward the study, but before they could reach it, a brilliant flash of blue light erupted from within. When it faded, Lyra was gone. Sound the alarm, Nova shouted, drawing her sword. Its blade hummed with protective enchantments. Lock down the tower. Bells began tolling throughout the structure, their urgent pealing shattering the night's silence. Raven cursed under her breath. Whatever the apprentice had done, it had just made her job much more complicated. Movement in her peripheral vision made her freeze. Jasper Reed, another apprentice she'd observed during her surveillance, was climbing the stairs toward the study, his face tight with worry. Nova intercepted him at the door. What happened here? Where is Apprentice Winters? Captain, Jasper hesitated, his eyes darting to the empty workbench. I warned her not to practice alone. The crystals, they're not stable when. When what? Nova's voice carried an edge sharp enough to cut stone. Before Jasper could respond, Magistrate Thuron appeared, his purple robes billowing around him. Captain Sterling, he said, his deep voice surprisingly calm given the chaos. This is an internal matter. I will handle my apprentices. Nova didn't lower her sword. With respect, magistrate, unauthorized use of temporal magic falls under imperial jurisdiction, if your apprentice has breached containment protocols. She hasn't. Thuron's tone made it clear the discussion was over. Lyra Winters is merely experiencing a standard resonance discharge. She will reappear shortly unharmed. From her hiding place, Raven noticed something odd. While Thuron's words were reassuring, his posture was tense, his eyes constantly scanning the room. He was lying. Sure enough, moments later, Lyra materialized not in the study, but in the corridor 3 floors below. Raven could just make out her form crumpled on the ground, shaking. There, Thuron said smoothly, as I predicted. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to attend to my student. Nova holstered her sword, but her expression remained suspicious. This isn't over, Magistrate. The Emperor has concerns about the stability of your research. If there are any more incidents, I will be forced to take action. Thuron merely nodded and swept from the room. Jasper hurried after him, leaving Nova alone in the study. The captain approached the workbench, examining the now dormant crystal with a practiced eye. What aren't you telling us, Thuron? She murmured. Raven found herself wondering the same thing. Her original plan, stealing a time crystal and delivering it to her mysterious client, suddenly seemed short-sighted. There were bigger secrets here, dangerous ones. She watched as Nova gathered her guards and established a perimeter around the tower. The captain was thorough, professional, and clearly not convinced by Thuron's explanation. That could be useful. Below, Lyra was being helped to her feet by tower servants. The young apprentice looked pale but determined. Whatever she'd experienced during her unauthorized experiment had affected her deeply. Raven made a decision. The time crystal would have to wait. First, she needed to understand what was really happening in the crystal tower, and for that, she needed inside information. As the night's excitement died down and the guards settled into their enhanced patrol patterns, Raven began plotting her next move. The apprentice Lyra would be key. Someone with her apparent talent for temporal magic could be a valuable ally or a dangerous enemy. Tomorrow, Raven would make contact. It would be risky, but her instincts told her the real prize wasn't the crystal itself, but the truth about why everyone seemed so afraid of their power. In her quarters, Nova Sterling stood at her window, watching the tower's crystalline spires pierce the night sky. 20 years in the Imperial Guard had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every one of them was screaming that something was wrong. She picked up a communication crystal from her desk. "Connect me to Imperial Intelligence," she commanded, "priority channel." The crystal hummed to life, its surface swirling with colors. "This is Sterling," she said quietly. "I need everything we have on Magistrate Thuron's research, all of it. Something's happening here and I intend to find out what." In the darkness, the crystal tower loomed over the city, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. And somewhere within its ancient walls, a young apprentice dreamed of swirling time streams and possibilities beyond imagination, unaware that she had just become the center of a game that would reshape reality itself. Lyra sat in the tower's vast library, surrounded by stacks of ancient texts, her mind still reeling from the events of the previous night. The time crystal's power had shown her something: fragments of possible futures, glimpses of paths not taken. But more disturbing than these visions was what she'd seen in Magistrate Thuron's private chambers during her temporal displacement. "Found anything interesting?" The voice made her jump. A woman emerged from between the towering bookshelves, her dark cloak seeming to absorb the library's dim light. Lyra reached for her warding crystal, but the stranger raised her hands in a peaceful gesture. "Raven Blackwood," she introduced herself with a slight bow. "And before you call the guards, you might want to hear what I know about your mentor's secret collection of forbidden temporal artifacts." Lyra's hand froze halfway to her crystal. "How did you?" "The same way I know about your little experiment last night." Raven settled into a chair across from her. "I've been watching this tower for weeks, but I must admit you've made things far more interesting than I expected." In the distance, armored footsteps echoed through the corridors. Captain Nova's enhanced patrols were still in effect, making every conversation potentially dangerous. "What do you want?" Lyra asked, keeping her voice low. "Originally, just a time crystal." Raven's expression grew serious. "But now, I want to know why Magistrate Thuron is so desperate to hide the truth about their power, and I think you do too." Before Lyra could respond, Jasper appeared from behind a nearby shelf. "She's right," he said, making both women tense. "And I can prove it." Raven's hand moved to what Lyra assumed was a concealed weapon, but Jasper quickly continued. "I've been investigating Thuron for months, ever since my brother disappeared during a failed crystal experiment." Your brother, Lyra remembered mentions of a previous apprentice, but details had been scarce. Thomas Reed, Jasper's voice cracked slightly. Thuron claimed he'd been displaced in time, that there was no way to bring him back, but I found evidence. The library door burst open. Captain Nova Sterling strode in, her silver armor gleaming in the magical lamplight. All three froze, but the captain's attention was fixed on a communication crystal in her hand. "Understood," she was saying. "I'll begin the investigation immediately." She stopped, finally noticing the group. Her eyes narrowed. "What's going on here?" Lyra's mind raced, but Raven spoke first. "Captain Sterling, perfect timing. We were just discussing some irregularities in the tower's temporal research." "Were you now?" Nova's hand rested on her sword hilt. "And who exactly are you?" "Someone with information about Magistrate Thuron's true experiments." Raven met the captain's gaze steadily. "The same experiments I suspect your superiors just ordered you to investigate." Nova's expression revealed nothing, but her silence was telling. After a long moment, she closed the library door and moved closer. "Talk," she commanded. Over the next hour, they shared what they knew. Jasper revealed documents he'd stolen from Thuron's private archives, showing experiments far beyond authorized temporal research. Raven produced sketches of strange devices being moved into the tower's lower levels, and Lyra, hesitantly, described what she'd seen during her displacement. "There was a chamber," she said, "deep below the tower. Dozens of time crystals all linked together, and in the center," she shuddered, "a void like a tear in reality itself." Nova's face had grown increasingly grim. "This matches intelligence reports we've received. Temporal disturbances across the Empire growing stronger, all centered on this tower." "Thuron's not just studying time," Jasper said quietly. "He's trying to break it." The captain stood, packing between the bookshelves. "If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond criminal activity. This is treason against reality itself." She turned to face them. "But I can't move against a magistrate without proof." "We can get it," Raven said. "Together, each of us has skills the others need." She looked at Lyra. "Your connection to the crystals, your ability to navigate temporal energy. To Jasper, your knowledge of the tower's secrets. And finally to Nova, your authority and combat expertise." "You're suggesting we work together," Nova's tone was skeptical, "with a thief." "I prefer freelance acquisitions expert," Raven smiled. "But yes, sometimes the law needs to bend to serve justice." Before anyone could respond, a deep tremor shook the tower. Books tumbled from shelves as magical alarms began blaring throughout the structure. "Another temporal disturbance," Jasper steadied himself against a table. Lyra's blood ran cold. "No," she whispered, "this is different. The crystals are resonating, but not like before. It's like they're screaming." Nova's communication crystal flared to life, multiple voices shouting for attention. The captain's face hardened as she listened. "Thuron's gone," she reported. "He's sealed himself in the lower chambers. Energy readings are off the charts." "He's starting the final phase," Jasper realized. "Whatever he's been planning, it's happening now." Raven drew two wickedly sharp daggers from beneath her cloak. "Well then, I'd say our timeline for working together just got dramatically shorter." "If we do this," Nova said, "we do it my way. No one dies unless absolutely necessary." "Agreed," Lyra stood, feeling the tower's crystals pulse in response to her movement. "But we need to hurry. Whatever Thuron's doing down there, it feels wrong, like he's tearing at something that should never be torn." The unlikely allies shared a look of grim determination. They had no plan, no time to prepare, and no guarantee of success. But they also had no choice. "The lower chambers are heavily warded," Jasper said. "But I know a way through the old maintenance tunnels." "Lead on," Nova commanded, drawing her sword. Its enchanted blade hummed with power. As they hurried from the library, Lyra felt the time crystal's energy growing stronger. Their song, usually a gentle harmony, had become a discordant chorus that set her teeth on edge. Whatever Thuron had discovered in his research, whatever power he hoped to gain by breaking the laws of time itself, they had to stop him. The fate of more than just the Empire hung in the balance. Reality itself was at stake, and their forbidden alliance might be the only thing standing between existence and oblivion. The maintenance tunnels beneath the crystal tower were a maze of shadows and forgotten passages. Jasper led the group through the darkness, his knowledge of the secret pathways proving invaluable. Behind him, Nova's enchanted sword provided a soft glow, while Raven moved silently as a ghost, checking for traps. Lyra brought up the rear, her connection to the time crystals growing stronger with each step deeper into the tower's foundation. The energy felt different here, older, wilder, like a primal force barely contained by the ancient walls. "Wait," she whispered, pressing a hand against the rough stone. "There's something echoing." The others stopped, watching as Lyra closed her eyes in concentration. Through her connection to the temporal energies, she could feel ripples in time itself, echoes of moments past and yet to come. "Show me," she murmured, and the world shifted. The tunnel transformed around them, becoming newer, cleaner. Robed figures hurried past, carrying crystals that pulsed with familiar blue light. At their head walked a woman whose features seemed to shift and change with each step. "The first magistrate," Jasper breathed. "This is from the tower's founding." The scene changed again. The same tunnel but different figures. Thuron, younger but still recognizable, speaking with a group of hooded individuals. "The prophecy is clear," his voice echoed. "When the stars align, the veil between moments will thin. We must be ready." "What prophecy?" Nova demanded as the vision faded. Before anyone could answer, a deep rumble shook the tunnel. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling as the time crystal's song grew more intense. "This way," Jasper pointed to a narrow side passage. "There's an old archive chamber. If there's information about a prophecy, it would be there." The archive was a circular room lined with crystalline tablets, each one humming faintly with preserved memories. At the center stood a pedestal bearing a single book, the same strange tome Lyra had seen in Thuron's study. Raven approached it cautiously. "No obvious traps, but," she gestured to the shifting symbols on its cover, "this is beyond my expertise." "I can read it," Lyra realized, surprised by her own certainty. "The crystals, they're helping me understand." She placed her hands on the book, and knowledge flooded her mind. Images, words, and concepts merged together into a terrifying truth. "The time crystals weren't created," she said, her voice distant. "They're fragments of something older, something that existed before time itself was ordered into past, present, and future." Nova frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Jasper's face had gone pale, "that the crystals are pieces of chaos, of pure possibility, and according to this prophecy, when properly aligned, they can unmake the order of time itself," Lyra finished. "Return everything to a state of infinite possibility." She looked up at her companions. "That's what Thuron is trying to do. He thinks he can control it, reshape reality according to his will." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. A crack appeared in one wall, leaking temporal energy that made the air shimmer and distort. "But he can't control it, can he?" Raven asked quietly. Lyra shook her head. "No one can. The prophecy warns that trying to harness this power will only lead to destruction." The crystals were scattered and sealed away to prevent exactly what Thuron's attempting. A sudden explosion of energy above made them all duck. Through the ceiling, they could feel the tower's crystals resonating in harmony with whatever ritual Thuron had begun. "We need to stop him," Nova said firmly. "How?" Lyra studied the book's shifting text. There's another part to the prophecy, a failsafe." She traced the strange symbols. "If someone with a natural connection to the crystals can reach the focal point of the ritual, they can reverse the energy flow." But what?" Jasper pressed. "But doing so would destroy all the crystals. Forever, their power would be sealed away where no one could reach it again." Lyra closed the book gently. "We'd be removing time manipulation from human hands entirely." Nova nodded grimly. "Better that than allowing reality itself to unravel." Before they could move, footsteps echoed from the tunnel outside. A group of tower guards appeared, led by a senior officer whose eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "Magistrate Thuron warned us you might interfere," the officer said in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "The ritual cannot be stopped. The great unmaking must proceed." "He's enthralled them," Raven drew her daggers. "Temporal manipulation of the mind." Nova raised her sword. "Lyra, you and Jasper find another way to the ritual chamber. We'll handle this." "There's a maintenance shaft," Jasper pointed to a narrow opening near the ceiling. It leads directly to the lower levels. Lyra hesitated, looking at Raven and Nova as they prepared to face the corrupted guards. I can't ask you to. Go, Raven smirked. Sorry, but you don't get to make some noble speech right now. We have guards to fight, you have reality to save. Simple division of labor. Nova nodded in agreement. We'll be right behind you, now move. As Lyra and Jasper climbed into the maintenance shaft, the sounds of combat erupted below. The last thing they heard was Nova shouting orders and Raven's laughter as she danced between opponents. The shaft was cramped and dark, filled with the overwhelming pulse of temporal energy. As they crawled through the ancient metal tube, Lyra could feel Thuron's ritual growing stronger. Do you think they'll be all right? She asked Jasper. They're survivors, he replied, though his voice held a note of worry. But none of us will be all right if we don't stop Thuron. The question is, are you ready to do what needs to be done? Lyra thought about the crystals, about the power they represented and the temptation they posed, about how that power had already corrupted one of the wisest mages she knew. Yes, she said firmly, whatever it takes. They continued their descent, moving toward a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of time itself. The ritual chamber was a cathedral of crystalline spires, each one pulsing with temporal energy that made the air itself waver and distort. At the center, suspended in a web of pure possibility, Magistrate Thuron stood with his arms raised toward a swirling vortex of time itself. Lyra and Jasper emerged from the maintenance shaft onto a high observation platform, taking in the impossible scene below. Dozens of time crystals had been arranged in a complex pattern, their combined power tearing holes in the fabric of reality. Beautiful, isn't it? Thuron's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple moments at once. He turned to face them and Lyra gasped. His eyes were pools of swirling temporal energy, his form flickering between different versions of himself. The power to reshape everything, to unmake the arbitrary rules that bind us to linear existence. This isn't right, Lyra stepped forward. The crystals were never meant to be used this way. The crystals were meant for exactly this, Thuron's voice boomed. Why do you think you have such a natural affinity for them, Lyra? You're connected to their true purpose just as I am. Join me. Help me break these chains of causality. Jasper moved to Lyra's side. Don't listen to him, remember what the prophecy said. Ah, you found the book. Thuron smiled, but the expression wasn't quite human anymore. Then you know what we could achieve. Think of it, Lyra, no more fixed outcomes, no more predetermined paths, pure possibility, endless potential. And the destruction of everything that makes us who we are, Lyra countered. Our choices matter because they're final, our moments have meaning because they pass. The vortex above them pulsed and reality rippled. Lyra saw glimpses of other timelines, versions of herself that had made different choices, lived different lives. The temptation to reach for them, to grasp all possibilities at once, was almost overwhelming. A crash echoed from the chamber entrance. Nova and Raven burst in, battered but alive, just as another wave of temporal energy swept through the room. The captain stumbled, her armor briefly shifting through different designs before stabilizing. The tower's breaking apart, Raven called out, her form blurring as time fluctuated around her. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Thuron raised his hands and the crystal's song reached a fever pitch. The alignment is complete, the great unmaking begins now. Lyra felt it, reality starting to unravel, past and future bleeding into present, but she also felt something else. The crystals weren't just responding to Thuron's commands, they were crying out in pain. You're hurting them, she realized. The crystals, they're not tools to be forced, they're alive. She reached out with her power, not trying to control the crystals but to connect with them, to understand. Show me, she thought, show me the truths. The chamber exploded with light as every crystal responded at once. Through their combined consciousness, Lyra saw everything, the moment of their creation, their true purpose, the reason for their scattered imprisonment. They're not fragments of chaos, she said aloud, her voice carrying despite the temporal maelstrom. They're fragments of order, the first order, the pattern that made time flow in the first place. She looked at Thuron with pity, and they chose to break themselves apart to prevent exactly what you're trying to do. Lies, Thuron's form was barely human now, a being of pure temporal energy. The power is mine to command. Lyra shook her head. No, it's theirs to give, and they're giving it to me. Before Thuron could react, Lyra stretched out her hands. Every crystal in the chamber resonated with her, their song changing from discord to harmony. The vortex above wavered, its chaotic energies beginning to stabilize. No, Thuron tried to reassert control, but the crystals had made their choice. Lyra felt their power flow through her, not as a tool to be used but as a partnership freely given. With their guidance, she began to seal the tears in reality to restore the proper flow of time. "Help me," she called to her friends. Nova stepped forward first, her sword raised. The enchantments in the blade resonated with the crystals, adding their strength to Lyra's efforts. Raven moved to her other side, producing a small crystal she'd stolen not to use but to return to its kin. Even Jasper contributed, his knowledge of the tower's construction helping to channel the energies properly. Thuron screamed in rage and desperation, hurling pure temporal energy at them. But Lyra stood firm, protected by the very power he'd tried to steal. The crystal's song reached its crescendo, and reality itself seemed to hold its breath. In that moment of perfect harmony, Lyra understood what needed to be done. The crystals had always known their fate, had chosen it eons ago when they first scattered themselves. "I'm sorry," she whispered to them, feeling their acceptance, their readiness. With a sound like breaking glass multiplied across infinite moments, every time crystal in existence shattered simultaneously. Their power, rather than dispersing chaotically, folded inward, sealing itself away in a space between moments where no one could ever reach it again. The vortex collapsed. Thuron's form stabilized, his power broken as reality snapped back into its proper flow. The great chamber, once a cathedral of crystalline might, stood empty and dark. In the silence that followed, Raven was the first to speak. "Well," she said, helping Nova to her feet, "I suppose this means I'm out of a job." Nova managed a tired smile. "I'm sure we can find something more legitimate for your talents." Jasper approached Lyra, who stood staring at the empty pedestals where the crystals had been. "Are you all right?" "They're not gone," she said softly. "Not really, they're just resting, watching, making sure time flows as it should." She turned to where Thuron lay unconscious, looking older and smaller without his temporal powers. "They showed me everything. How they chose to break themselves apart when the first mages tried to harness their power. How they've been guiding us, testing us, waiting for someone who would understand." "And now," Nova asked, securing Thuron with enchanted restraints. "Now we do what we were meant to do," Lyra smiled. "We live our lives, we make our choices. We experience time as it was meant to be experienced, one moment at a time." Together, they made their way out of the chamber, leaving behind the empty pedestals and broken dreams of infinite possibility. The crystal tower would stand as a reminder not of power that was lost, but of wisdom that was gained. As they emerged into the pre-dawn light, Lyra felt the last echoes of the crystal's song fade away. But in its place was something just as precious. The simple, profound beauty of a single moment, followed by another and another, stretching into a future that was hers to discover one choice at a time.